So journalists have been putting more and more pressure on the State Department when it comes to the genocide in Gaza. And I'm starting to notice that some of the State Department officials, particularly Matt Miller, is starting to become a little unraveled, a little flustered when he is, questioned about the U.S. involvement and what is the goal. I want to start with this clip, and we'll get to why this clip is important, because this is going to lead into the response from Joe Biden in reference to whether or not he wants to give Israel more weapons. So let's go ahead and start with Matt Miller's response here. He's getting very flustered by these questions.
It is also true that a lot of the harm to civilians is because of the way Hamas decided to embed itself in the civilian population in the first place. That in no way changes the burden on the government of Israel.
But respectfully, Matt, I mean, they're dead because the armed forces of Israel killed them.
Going after Hamas fighters who are hiding behind civilians. That has been true since day one. It remains true today. Go ahead.
So again, why haven't they killed Hamas? You see what I mean? Like, you see, he's starting to get, guys, you notice he's starting to become more flustered as time goes on. Yeah, you can only lie for so long before you crack.
But just to follow up on his question, your answer makes it sound like it's an okay number for 40,000 people.
Hold on. That is not at all a fair reading of what I said. I made quite clear that we have made quite clear for months and months and months that far too many Palestinians have been killed in this conflict. And we have engaged with the government of Israel to bring down the level of civilian death and convince them to take additional steps to reduce civilian harm. When we look at the operation in Rafah, it is a landscape like no other, both because of the way people are densely packed into such a small area, people from Gaza City, people from Khan Younis, and unlike with respect to an operation in Gaza City or Khan Younis, there's nowhere for them to evacuate to. And that is a critical difference when it comes to a Rafah operation that didn't exist for previous ones.
Notice how flustered he became when she said, well, you're basically, he interrupted her, but you're basically making it sound like that excuses Israel killing, over 40,000 people. And he tried to interrupt, but honestly, that does. Like what he said there, he was basically making an excuse for Israel's indiscriminate bombing, the genocide of the Palestinian people. He was making excuses for Israel. They've been making excuses for Israel. Matt was not happy.
The Israeli army says that it has the munitions it needs for the Rafah operation and for any planned operations. Does that mean, do you think that is their way of saying we will go into Rafah?
I will let them speak for themselves on those questions.
She raised her hand again. She's like, wait a minute. I'm not done here yet. Now, why is this important? This is important because Joe Biden made a statement recently. This was during a CNN exclusive interview that he is considering not giving Israel any more weapons if they decide to do the operation in Rafah. And this really, sent Netanyahu into a spiral. He's already a lunatic anyway, but it made him even more crazy. And some of the senators are speaking out against this as well. So you're going to see this come from Senator Coons. He is not in agreement with this. But I'm going to tell you why this is basically theater. Listen to this.
I want to ask you about something happening as we sit here and speak, and that, of course, is Israel is striking Rafah. I know that you have paused, Mr. President, shipments of 2,000-pound U.S. bombs to Israel due to concern that they could be used in any offensive on Rafah. Have those bombs, those powerful 2,000-pound bombs, been used to kill civilians in Gaza?
Civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of those bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers.
So here is Joe Biden admitting that the weapons that were supplied by the U.S. government, yes, have been used towards civilian deaths.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah.
Pause. Go back. Let's catch the first lie. Okay. Watch this.
Gaza as a consequence of those bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers. And I made it clear that If they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet.
Yes, they have. So there's the first lie. They haven't gone into Rafah yet. Didn't I show you video footage on this channel just a couple nights ago of the IDF already entering Rafah? Running over the signs, attacking people in tents. They're already there. Now, this may not be the full scale ground operation that Netanyahu has planned, but they are already there.
If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah, artillery shells.
So this is what is causing the big stir. So he said that if they are can basically do this full scale operation in Rafah, he is not going to supply the weapons. But we'll get to it in a second. And I'll show you why this is all theater. Again, this is Joe Biden trying to win over some of that young voter support that he has obviously lost because of this particular situation.
Just to understand what they're doing right now in Rafah. Is that not going into Rafah as you define it?
No, they haven't gone into the population centers. What they did is right on the border, and it's causing problems with right now in terms of with Egypt, which I've worked very hard to make sure we have a relationship and help. But I've made it clear to Bibi and the War Cabinet, they're not going to get our support if in fact they go in these population centers.
Okay, so let me show you why this is theater, right? Okay. So let me make sure I'm going to the right thing. Am I here? Yeah. Aaron Mate tweeted this. Yes, right after a Biden official quietly admitted that Israel already has all the U.S. weaponry it needs to invade Rafah. I will say this again. Yes, right after a Biden official quietly admitted that Israel already has all the U.S. weaponry it needs to invade Rafah. So do you see why this is theater? They already have the weapons. Yes, of course, they're going to ask for more, but they already have the weapons. So if he thinks that young voters are going to be fooled by this, he is sadly mistaken. Now, to that point, Netanyahu obviously offered a response to this. I want to make sure this is the one. Yeah, okay, I think. Offered a response to this. He is not happy about that. He is basically saying that if Israel stands alone, it stands alone.
80 years ago, in the Holocaust, the Jewish people were totally defenseless against those who sought our destruction. No nation came to our aid. Today, we again confront enemies bent on our destruction. I say to the leaders of the world, no amount of pressure, no decision by any international forum will stop Israel from defending itself. As the Prime Minister of Israel, the one and only Jewish state, I pledge here today from Jerusalem on this Holocaust Remembrance Day, if Israel is forced to stand alone, Israel will stand alone.
Okay. Bye. Why are you continuing this conversation? Okay. Why are you still reaching out to our political officials? Why are you still trying to get weapons from the United States? If you want to stand alone, stand on your own. Why are you still reaching out?
But we know we're not alone, because countless decent people around the world support our just cause. And I say to you, we will defeat our genocidal enemies. Never again is now.
So Hamas is the genocidal enemy when Israel is actually the one committing the genocide. Everybody see how this works? It's like I said before, almost everything that they accuse Hamas of doing, you find out they're doing these things. And we actually have evidence to prove that they're doing it. They don't even have evidence. They didn't have evidence to prove about the essay, the assaults that happened, that they said happened on October 7th. They had no forensics evidence at all. None. That's why that piece by the New York Times, there was so much pressure to pull that piece because they had no evidence. But we really actually have evidence to show what Israel has done. And they take those claims and they apply all those claims on Hamas every time. So if you want to stand alone, stand alone. Stop contacting our politicians. Stop having these organizations like AIPAC still lobbying in Congress. Stand alone. You want to stand alone? Stand alone, BB. Stop accepting that $3.8 billion that you get from the U.S. government every year. You want to stand alone. You got universal health care. You got free colleges for everybody in Israel. Stand on your own. And I think a lot of people in this country will be totally fine with that, except for the politicians. So Chris Coons here, he's a complete sellout. I want to remind you, he voted against the $15 minimum wage. He's a senator from Delaware, the credit card state. Also, Joe Biden's state. Go figure. Him and Biden are tight. They defend and support the credit card companies. Let that sink in. He is speaking out against Joe Biden and in favor of Netanyahu. So listen to this.
So what is it that we're saying with regards to Rafah? What I said to the Prime Minister was, you don't just have the right to defend the Israeli people against Hamas, you have the obligation. After October 7th, you have to restore a sense of security and deterrence against this terrorist organization that massacred more Jews, more civilians, 1,200 people of a wide range of backgrounds, in fact.
Did they have an obligation before October 7th, Chris? Did they have an obligation to remove Palestinian people from their homes in the West Bank? Did they have an obligation to do that? Did they have an obligation to put the Palestinian people in Gaza, who are, a lot of them are refugees, to put them in Gaza in an open air prison? Did they have the obligation to do that?
The worst day for Jews since the Holocaust, but many who are still held captive beneath Gaza by Hamas are from a dozen different nations, languages, and religions. You have to go after them. You have to finish the job. You have to go into Rafah and go after these 4 remaining battalions, and you have to secure Gaza and make certain that Hamas does not reemerge as a fighting force that can ever threaten Israel again. And given that there are 1 million civilian refugees who've flown down to the very bottom of Gaza and are now up against the hard border with Egypt, and given that Egypt will not allow any of them into Egypt, you have to provide a pathway for civilians to leave Rafah before you go in at scale with a bombing campaign, a ground campaign, to minimize civilian injuries and deaths.
Leave Rafah and go where? There's nowhere else for them to go. And Chris Coons knows that. Mind you, this is the same Chris Coons that Aaron Mate actually confronted on the train. You guys remember that story about the quiet car? He confronted him on the quiet car, right? And he was confronting him about Ukraine at that point in time, right?
If there are 10,000 or so Hamas fighters remaining in Rafah, and if the multiplier, to use a crass term, has been 2 to 1 civilian deaths for every Hamas fighter killed, to contemplate 20 or 30,000 more civilian deaths in Rafah is to contemplate a horrifying outcome. But it is not acceptable to leave Hamas in control of a segment of Gaza and capable of returning. So what is it I am hoping and expecting Israel will do? To relocate all of the civilians in Rafah north in Gaza, screen them so that none of the leaders of Hamas or the fighters of Hamas escape, to provide for humanitarian aid and for shelter in another part of Gaza, and then to go in at scale, get into the tunnels, secure the release of the hostages if possible, and finish the job. That is difficult, but in my view, doable.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening at all. Just being honest about that. But there are things that are happening because something happened at the UN. And this is a good thing in reference to the Palestinian people. You know, it has been brought forth before that the need for Palestinian statehood. That topic came up again at the UN. I want you to hear what Palestinian ambassador to the UN says during his speech, and then I'm going to show you the results of what happened.
In simple words, voting yes is the right thing to do. And I can assure you, you and your country for years to come will be proud to have stood for freedom, justice, and peace in this darkest hour. As everyone is saying, free Palestine, and peace for all. And I repeat, free Palestine, and vote yes for the resolution. And I thank you so much.
So, you know, great speech there. But of course, and thank you for this video here, Eric. Israel's UN ambassador obviously did not support that at all. And I want to show you what he does here. This guy is just crazy and unhinged. I've just never seen. I got to tell you, like the amount of just hate, the amount of evil. It's just, how can you be such a hateful person? Israel's UN ambassador takes a mini shredder at the General Assembly podium to shred pages of a pocket-sized UN charter. Like, look at this. How can you be this hateful?
You are shredding the UN Charter with your own hands. Yes, yes, that's what you're doing. Shredding the UN Charter. Shame on you.
The only one shredding that charter at that point in time was him, apparently. You know, it just, and also the theatrics. Like, why do you have to be so dramatic, bruh? Why do you have to be so dramatic? I'm going to show you why. The UN General Assembly backs Palestinian bid for membership. This is another good sign here. Another good sign. I saw this earlier today and I said, oh, hells yeah. The United Nations General Assembly on Friday overwhelmingly backed a Palestinian bid to become a full UN member by recognizing it as qualified to join and recommending the UN Security Council reconsider the matter favorably. Now it says overwhelmingly was backed, right? Obviously, still has to pass in the UN Security Council, but I still think this is a good sign. The vote by the 193-member General Assembly was a global survey of support for the Palestinian bid to become a full UN member, a move that would effectively recognize a Palestinian state after the United States vetoed it in the UN Security Council last month. So this is coming up again. Now, you guys know, I don't believe a two-state solution is the best way to go. I think there should be one state and everybody should be, you know, equal. There should be equality across the board. And I think that one state should be a secular state. I don't think it should be a Jewish state. I don't think it should be a Palestinian state. I think it should be a secular state where everybody is treated equally under the law. That's my goal. But the fact that they have pretty much dismissed any type of, or any type of transition toward a Palestinian state, and now you see the UN Assembly overwhelmingly support it. This is really interesting. Things are starting to take a turn. The Assembly adopted a resolution with 143 votes in favor of 9 against, including the United States and Israel. While 25 countries abstained, it does not give Palestinians full UN membership, but simply recognizes them as qualified to join. The resolution determines that the Palestinian state should therefore be admitted to membership, and it recommends that the Security Council reconsider the matter favorably. The Palestinian push for full UN membership, this comes 7 months into the war between Israel and Palestinian militants Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and as Israel is expanding settlements in the occupied West Bank, which the UN considers to be illegal. So this is another reason why I feel that Israel doesn't want actually Netanyahu's administration does not want a two-state solution, is because they don't want to give up those territories, those occupations that they have in the West Bank. They would have to make changes there. We want peace. We want freedom. Palestinian UN Ambassador Riyad Mansour told the assembly before the vote. A yes vote is a vote for Palestinian existence. It is not against any state. It is an investment in peace. Voting yes is the right thing to do. So this is a sign that things are starting to change. Again, I don't think you get any of this without the massive protests that we've had across the world. People, continue to tell me that direct action doesn't work. I disagree with that. I think direct action can work, especially when you have specific demands. And when that action is a massive movement, it actually can work. And I think sometimes particularly in this country, we have gotten away from that because we've kind of been consumed with voting for a presidential candidate and thinking that that is going to solve everything. I believe for me, this started under Barack Obama. When Obama ran in 2008, there was this great belief that this guy was going to be the one to change everything. It was a mistake for me to put all of my hope in one person. It was a mistake for me to think that that was all I needed to do was to vote for President Obama and everything was going to change, regardless of what he said when he was running for office. And just like that, I think a lot of us turned away from the on the ground action. We turned away from direct action, and direct action has always been a useful tool. And we should never forget that.